Angel, do your Chinese math thing, where you go like this and you get the number. He's all of a sudden he's like, 9.
I
uh,
cannot count to 8 in my head. So like,
no, but it's more like 600,000 blah, and
yeah, I
what?
know. I am ready, gentlemen. Let's start the show. Sorry about this.
We started 5 minutes back.
This is
Yep.
it's 3:13. We started at 2:59. Ready? We got your undivided attention, as they would say in high school.
Yes. Yes. Yes, mom. Yes. Yes, Miss. Yes, Mr. Luna.
Now that we have Angel's undivided attention, I've been thinking that for next year, in one of the shows that we get together, what we should do is we should do a shrimp talk, but hire a whiskey connoisseur. And he can do like a whiskey tasting, like we did in Ecuador when all of this started. But
Sure.
so you imagine that we get a room. I could do it in Utrecht. I went to that castle nearby. I don't even remember the name.
The Haag, the Haag.
A
Whatever he
castle.
said, castle. It's a beautiful place, and they actually rent a room. If we have a room there and we do a whiskey tasting and we talk about statistics and actually do the production data there, that would be superb. Of course, everybody would come out drunk because it's a beautiful place and it just invites you to drink. It's a castle, a real life castle, like really cool with stores and
Lots
everything.
of things invite me to drink, so but a castle is definitely one of them. Yeah.
People would think, "Oh, he's been in a castle before." No, I haven't had a drink in a castle. I had a sip
Right.
of. They gave me like a champagne glass or something while I was doing the walkthrough. They want to get you buzzed so that on the way out you buy something. They have a store. Like everybody, anywhere you go, at the end there's a store where you can drop your bucks. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the Shrimpcast episode number Christmas edition. What a crazy year! I think we've done 2 episodes this year. Before this one, this could be the third. I don't know if the third or the fourth, and there's not more than that for this year. And it hasn't been because we don't want to. It's really a crazy year that has us extremely busy in our day jobs, right? I'm here with Angel and I'm here with Willem. Welcome, guys. Willem, just to quickly touch on the success of the Global Shrimp Forum, please tell us a little about last year's forum, because those who haven't seen it or haven't watched it, just give us a line, one line, two lines.
Still this year, Gabriel.
You guys give the line because you experienced it. What did you think?
Angel,
Yeah.
Angel, you can start.
I don't know. I think it's probably one of my favorite shows. Not only it's good food, but like everybody's on time.
We'll make sure that everybody is on time. That's for sure.
Yeah, the speakers are very good. The presentations are good. The interactions are great. The people who actually attend and are sitting, not necessarily just the speakers, but the people who are attending it are, the people that are in the industry. For me, it's the best way to connect with the top people in the industry, in the shrimp industry. Not seafood as a whole, but very focused on shrimp. So I don't know. I think it's great. Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing else I can add.
Cool,
For
cool.
me, it's a very managerial experience. For me, it's one of those shows that you step aside from my daily job, which is buying and selling shrimp and attending to the daily aspects of the business. And I get to see where each company figures they're going to be, where they are going. And because these are the biggest companies in the world and they are talking about shrimp, and it's only shrimp, that's another thing that I really like about it. It's that it's not a multi-species, it's a shrimp specific, and I'm shrimp crazy. So it fits with me particularly perfect. Of course, shrimp is a big item in most of these companies, and it's like number one import for a lot of people. It does give you a good way to understand the trend and where it's going. I think it's one of those must-dos. Keep on doing it.
So
Keep on
next,
making it cooler like you always
Must
do.
must do is like
so
good.
next year we have our fifth edition, and like we of course decide to stay in Utrecht again. Like we will not go away from Utrecht for the foreseeable future. So, but of course we also want that people feel like they have a new experience when they walk in. Right? It's nice that they know the venue, but we also want them to feel like they are having a new experience. Right? So that has been my challenge to the hotel and to the AV partner. It's like, hey guys, we are gonna come for the fifth time to this hotel. Like, how can you make everyone who walks in have a completely different experience, right? So they have been working on proposals, and actually I've received all those proposals. And on Monday I've got my board meeting, and then we'll take a couple of decisions. But like a few of the big things that are going to change is that the plenary room, we have this very wide room, which is not ideal, right? Like if you sit on the sides, you don't see the stage that well, blah, 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 blah. So we are actually going to move the plenary room. The whole plenary room is going to change to the room where we have the trade statistics session, which is a much better room in terms of shape. And we are going to have a fantastic stage with a separate stage for actually the presentations and then a separate stage for the panels with a huge LCD screen behind it. It's going to be very fancy. So that's really, really cool. We are going to bring the welcome reception, which was normally in that room. We are going to bring it to the restaurant downstairs, which is also going to be a new experience with some like live music, good food, and those kind of stuff. So a lot of things in the venue are going to change. We are going to have like an all about shrimp all day bar in the exhibition where you can get all day ceviche and frittata.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I'm in. Oh,
So,
for me, that's hit it out of the ballpark. I love that. I love the fact that we can go and get ceviche any time of the day.
And then on the content, I've got a couple of things that we are working on, but two cool things is like we are definitely going to have Jan Lambrechts again as our keynote speaker. So that's the chief economist of Rabobank, who will give this very macroeconomic geopolitics scenario. And we are actually in the process of hiring either Nielsen or Circana to do a very big scanning study in Europe across the European Union and the UK to give a really in-depth perspective on European retail. And I'm going to complement that with a really in-depth presentation on the importer landscape, right? So I've studied all the bill of lading for all the countries available. And I'm kind of going to show like, hey guys, this is the market segments and these are the players. How consolidated is it? How many companies are there in each segment, in each country? How big are they? What volumes are they doing? So it's going to be like a really deep dive on Europe. We are going to do an equal deep dive on the Middle East because like we got a feedback that actually people really like
up and coming market.
What people told us, like over the years, you have become a little bit technical and a little bit more sustainability oriented. And that's not what we necessarily want, but it happened over time. So I'm really pulling hard to bring it back to the more commercial side. So we're going to have a lot of more like hardcore commercial topics on the agenda, having these emerging markets on the agenda. Yeah, so a lot of work in progress. We have already 24 sponsors confirmed. So we are almost done with the sponsorships. And so it's all coming together.
And it's 4th of December. It's not even the end of the year.
The show was 3 months ago. Like, what the hell?
Hey, amazing, bro. Thank you, and keep on doing it. We'll keep on going.
Yeah.
This episode, we're gonna have several topics. Okay. And one of those topics is it's a mandatory drinking episode. There's no antibiotics. There's no reason. His hand is hurting or
metabisulfites.
A mosquito bit me or something. I am going to drink Talisker and I'm going to enjoy this. You are having Angel, can you tell us, please, what are you having?
It's a mescaloni.
Mescaloni.
It's a mezcal Negroni.
Okay, there we go. He found a way to say it nicer. Mescaloni. He just mixed a lot of booze and put some big ice there, and he's just going for it. And then, Willem, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking my Nika coffee grain. Really nice.
Nika as in Japanese or Nika from Nicaragua?
Japanese.
Wow. Salute, guys. Thank you for joining. It's good that we get together every now and then. We do have great conversations and let's hope that today we get a few great conversations. And let's try and keep them by topic so that we can cut it out into pieces and then share it with everyone by pieces so that people don't have to watch the entire 40 minutes in one sitting, in one straight shot.
Right.
Which we've known to do before. Very often. I wanted to share a little bit of what Ecuador is doing. So Ecuador, until today, I don't want to share them. This one just shows October. October was 256 million pounds. That's 35% of increase with last year. But here's the trick. Last year was the year of the electric problem. So there was a lot of accumulation and it shipped in November. Okay, so we will see that November is not going to be another 35% increase month. We're actually very in line for that 15% increase. If we do January through October year to date, it is a 15% increase. On the left, you see that January to October year to date. And on the right, you just see a simple average, the total of the year divided by the amount of months you have. And this year we're up 14% from last year. I wanted to specifically go to a USA graph, and that one I'm going to point all my fingers towards Mr. Angel. USA. Look at the last 3 months of exports to USA: August, September, October. Clearly, there's an interest. There's something there going on, which means that Ecuador is taking advantage of having one of the lowest CVDs and anti-dumping, and also the disruption that there was a little bit with the Indonesian issue. Ecuador was able to speed up their doing of easy peels and value added, and they've been taking a good position there. If we go in a year to date, 25% increase. In your corner, Angel, drink, drink, drink. Wait, that's a good one. In your corner, first, let's have a drink before you start talking. This increase, we expected it. Were you expecting it? Were you thinking something bigger than that increase, 25% January through October from Ecuador to USA?
Definitely not. I mean, I was expecting definitely an increase. My estimate are gonna end up with Ecuador at 15 plus percent. Remember that also Ecuador, like imports from Ecuador in the US, like at the beginning of the year were relatively low. They were lower, like all Q1 was lower compared to the
Yeah.
previous year. We were expecting this because we knew that the tariffs were gonna come. And that shift in demand was already happening, it was just going to exacerbate it. But we never knew the magnitude of this, right? Like we were not expecting 50% for India, nor what the implications were going to be. Of course, they're going to go to Ecuador, but they're also going to go to Indonesia. They're probably going to go to Vietnam, blah, 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 to see what the situation is, right?
Yeah, but you turned over to Indonesia, and Indonesia was in trouble.
The curveball was the FDA for Indonesia and their impacts on the peeled market, because Indonesia is key on peeled market, especially that
Especially
easy
cooked
peeled
peeled,
market.
right? Also the cooked peeled or not? But the cooked peeled is going to India, right? That's the savior for the Indians.
The cooked peeled, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They are cooked, yeah. India's mostly cooked, like that's the larger ones. But yes,
But
Indonesia also has a big presence,
to
and then
clarify,
Vietnam. Yeah.
to clarify a little, because I think what Willem was saying is yes, Indonesia is the best or the biggest easy peel supplier, the biggest easy
Yes.
peel supplier, Indonesia. But they
Yeah.
were also doing the cook tell on.
Yeah.
The cook tell on,
Yes.
they were
They were the
doing it. And
second supplier. Yeah.
okay, and when they got in trouble, and they got the FDA trouble, a lot of that cook tell on shifted to
To
India,
India. So
giving
it was,
India extra
yeah.
value, more dollars, which is crucial because, of course, their item is more expensive, but they have such a high tariff to counterpart that
There was some window to ship some of that product quickly. Like if you can do it right away, like some of those containers probably made it before October 5th, but I think there was a lot of and I know this, like when a lot of these quotes were happening for delivery in November, they're like, well, the quote is this plus 50% if it's from India. And a lot of buyers here were like, well, if I'm gonna eat the 50%, then instead of taking those 100 containers, I'm gonna take 70. I'm gonna take the 30% less or 20% less, or you give me half year, and because obviously all these budgets are preset like last year, right? Like in 2024. And when you come with this budget and suddenly it's 50% more at least, then that has a different dynamic, right? So that changes. And the Indonesian disruption is far bigger than we think. It does act a lot more like a shock rather than an expected cautious approach with India, right? Because you knew about India in August and they were like, okay, well, we were not buying anyway, and they're not harvesting a lot anyway at that point. So that kind of like plays out a little bit in like that balances the equation. Does that make sense?
But the funny thing is you are making a mistake, right? Like you are saying they were not harvesting. They were harvesting.
Well, no, I'm sure they were, and you can
And
see that in the export numbers to
big
China.
time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
but it was their second big harvest. Now, from your point of view, Willem, and I agree, they were harvesting. It was their second big harvest, the final, let's say, the final big harvest of the year. The next harvest is smaller, but this was the final big harvest of the year between August and September. And in that harvest, they get hit with that 25 extra percent, and they have to either ship quickly, which was great because they could. Some of them could, right? But they also had to. You are hit with a burning fireball, and you have to ship it without burning your hands, meaning you have to be able to process as much as possible in the highest possible value added format to get it before the tariff, because the more value added or the more expensive the item, let's say that a very finished item, a 50% tariff on a cooked item, which is a more expensive, 50%, it's much higher. It throws it way up there.
Of course.
Well, the interesting thing is that like if you look at the numbers, so So the year total to Europe is actually plus 37%, right? Every other market is an increase. Japan, Canada.
It's only the US that I have a minus 2.4%. I have a total of 11% through September. Is that somewhere around what you have?
For the US.
From
No, for
India.
total, all regions.
You mentioned Europe, and I think Europe is brilliant this year. Look at this, and this is what the Ecuadorians saw. But what you are reading off your slides not only happened to the Ecuadorians, it happened also to the Indians, right? This growth of exports and growth of market. So the European market has just proven to be out of whack. I mean, they are buying shrimp. They want shrimp in a peeled format for sure. They continue to take the head on, yes, but their growth, their real growth, has been in a lot of the value-added programs. If you can see here, January through October, we are 29% up.
I think that's not entirely true in the sense that if you look at geography, like if you divide, let's say, Europe into the north and the south, you could say the north is probably 80% peeled, 70% peeled, and the south is 70-80% head on. But both regions grew equally, right? So it's both. Let me check the number. It's like Jan to September, both the north and the south. So the south is plus 18% through September, and the north is plus 18. So it's both 18%, exactly the same growth.
Okay. In the south, even though you have it as a lot of head-on, in the south is also Italy and Spain, and I think that both of these are taking more peeled products. So I think that even though they are usually more head-on, I think that there is a component of an extra amount of peeled products being done.
Primarily for maybe Italy and Portugal a little bit, maybe France a little bit, but Spain is hardly any peeled, right? It's like
I think it will surprise us.
Yeah, do you think so?
I think because, for example, the Canary Islands, and there's a few there's a few people that are taking a lot of P&Ds, at least from what I'm seeing in our internal sales. Yes, Northern Europe, I agree with you. That's where the most of the value added goes, especially to the food reprocessors that do daily deliveries, and that kind of companies do an awesome job at that. Do you want to see a little bit more of Ecuador? I could share the amount of peeled products that we're doing. That's the volume of peeled right there on the right. This is the amount of raw material that gets used for peeled. The amount of raw material that gets used for peeled, right? So we can see that 1,000 million pounds of raw material being used for peeled January through October. And it's almost the same as the amount of shrimp being used for head-on, which is 1,395 million. And if you add headless and value-added, now you have 1,800, and those two make up a larger portion than the head-on exports, which is big because it's recently that has changed. Ecuador was usually a bigger head-on producer than a value-added producer. Then we can talk about a little bit about China, but what you mentioned was key. China, since August, has been buying shrimp also from India. I'm guessing from Indonesia and from everywhere around.
Let me check. Let me very quickly take it. So Chinese imports, like if you look at the year through October, it is now at minus 1%, with like 0% in October.
Minus 1%?
Minus 1. So it started with minus 28 plus 3, minus 8 plus 5 plus 6 plus 9 plus 10 plus 5 plus 1 minus 0. So that brings, due to January, it brings it to a minus 1. Yeah, the rest of the year was actually slightly positive.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about like 3%, 4%, something like that, that's just a flat market. That's
and
just
that has to
essentially.
do, and that minus 28% in January has to do with the timing of Chinese New Year, right? So
Yeah. It's seasonal. So like the seasonal component is
the value is up plus 8%, so prices are better than last year. Ecuador is minus 1 through October, minus 8 in October. India is plus 1 through October, plus 56 in October. Thailand plus 18.
That's huge. That India plus 56 is big.
Yes, that's October, right? So that were September exports. So wait for China November numbers. China November numbers will even be higher for India, right? Imports into China. It will probably be plus 65 or maybe even plus 70, right?
And that's where the Ecuadorian farmers are trying to wait for that, or we're looking for that. Let's wait for that increase in prices, because there's always this added demand from China. And this year it didn't come. I have a few questions that I left for the end. I'm first going to read the 3 questions, or the 2 questions. One is the duties. When do they come down for India? number two, because that's something to talk about, because it's 2 weeks from
That is the elephant in the room,
it's two
man.
weeks
I
from
mean,
every day that
that's
we talk about it. But then let's get into that one in detail. And the other one, I asked already the volumes of each country. So we got that one out of the way. The duties and prices. We have seen prices this year fairly steady, and I have to do prices. I have to think of prices without going to the US only. I have to think of raw material prices, because if I go to the US, then of course there's this in the US, right? Up and down because of tariffs and whatnot. But that, when you take it back to the raw material, it has been a fairly steady year in raw material, fairly steady compared to other years.
what do you mean, like fairly steady? Like slightly up, slightly down, in terms of
Eh,
like this is farm to packer, right?
This is farm to packer, and the line has been it went down a little bit when there was a lot of volume, and then it went up a little bit. But the fluctuation hasn't been. I can show a graph. Can you see the screen? What are you seeing?
Yeah, yeah.
In this graph, you can see that 2025, the prices started off for 30/40 around 390, 385. Then they went down to 370. Then there was a lot of volume harvested. You can see the volume here. And then the prices went down, but immediately they picked up. It was just a defensive mechanism. And immediately it went right back up. And we can see that it has been a fairly leveled year, because it went back up to $4. It went to 410 for a little bit, and then it's now at 385. So if you figure that prices have fluctuated between 385, 375, and 410 at its peak, 30 cents, and I'm talking per kilo. 30 cents per kilo is 15 cents per pound. To me, that's a very stable year
Yeah.
in a per
Yeah.
pound year. 15 cents per pound allows for everybody to make plans, to put this in a menu, to use this item, to consider this a good buy, etc. Right? So
Not from a raw material perspective, because there's everything else, right? Like to put it on the menu, you have to account like several more steps of trading,
yes,
right?
but only that's only in the US, right?
I mean, does that not happen in Europe?
Well, there hasn't been any changes in the legislation in Europe, and there hasn't been no tweets about tariffs. So Europe's still charging the same amount of tariffs. So there really is no change in the import price in Europe. So prices have gotten good, and that could be one of the reasons why, at a low price, there's an increased consumption in Europe.
Fair argument.
Okay, so that was the prices question. What do you see happening in prices, Willem, in raw materials? Do you see a lot of supply that could harden or could make it more difficult for prices? Or do you think that there's, from the amount of demand we've talked about, because we talked about all of the countries that buy it, and we're talking about all the countries that supply it. I mean, it's a guess. It's a wild guess, because it really is. Do we believe that it's being eaten, or do we believe that it's being stored? That's the magic number, right? Is storage going up, or is storage the same and people are using it more? And so what do you think, Willem?
You mean at origin or in the market?
At origin, and let's try and say, what do we think is going to happen? We've seen it's been a very flat and positive year, because it actually went up in, for example, Asia in the last quarter. It went up to the farm. So
Yeah.
what do we expect in the next 3 or 4 months? Less supply in India because of the season until what, May?
No, I think
March?
that it depends a little bit. Like harvest will continue until January, and then you'll have a real low period in Jan, Feb, March, probably. April, supply should strengthen again. Broodstock imports are not that bad, so it means that there is at least some ambition, although you can see some hesitation. Yeah, but I think it's really hard to say at this moment. I think that as soon as the tariffs are dropped, or if at least 25% is dropped, like they will make a kickstart again, right? So,
Yeah.
and I think that uncertainty is really what we started with, right? Like it's holding the whole market.
That's key, right? That uncertainty is key, because if they don't see the same amount because of the uncertainty of the tariffs, there'll be less product. And if there's less product, that will mean that the market will remain tough to replenish your inventory. How about you, Angel? From your point of view, which let's say your point of view is the importer in the United States, are you seeing that there is too much product, that there right now it feels a little bit like the people are unloading what they have. They don't want to be burned in case that it drops. People are afraid of a Merry Christmas from Trump to the importing countries, and say, okay, well, no tariff for a week.
So I do have like the latest inventory estimates, and the inventory estimates should tell a little bit of the story. And I let me see if I can I can share my screen real quick.
Share it, share it, share it.
Because this will stem a little into the narrative of what I wanted to say earlier. Well, in the meantime,
It's not you, it's me.
it's
Salud.
definitely you.
It's definitely me. Willem's falling asleep already. Willem, have a drink.
No, I'm looking at my India data. I'm afraid I'm wrong because I can see for 1 month.
Can
Let
you
him know
say
so that
that I was right instead of
let
you
him know
saying
so
that
that
you
he
were
can go to
wrong?
bed
Wait,
tonight.
wait, wait, wait for a few minutes. Wait for a
Yeah,
few
yeah.
minutes.
He won't go to sleep today if you don't let him know.
This is super important. I'm seeing this diversion, and maybe this can actually kickstart a good conversation, and more for you to edit, Gabriel. But
Wait. What do I edit? Let me know.
no, because it's gonna be long. But my view of this is that India, by going to China and Europe and seeing this growth, it actually tells me what William was saying earlier, that he's okay. Well, the US is not taking it because of the 50%, but somehow within 6, 7 months, they managed to go to other markets and somewhat balance the whole thing. Is like, so it's almost like there's not a lot of problems from, I mean, I'm not, it's easy for me to say, right?
Correct.
Just saying,
I was just gonna say that it's
generally
it's
speaking, of course, it's an issue.
it's
I'm just saying.
generous to say it was easy. I'm sure it was super duper tough
No,
but
I know.
here's what I
I'm
always
just
say. Never underestimate the other persons and the other persons in the business, right? A lot of
No, of
people
course not.
they
No, no,
saw the
no.
50%, they're like, oh, that's it. That's very difficult. That's gonna be a doomer.
Oh,
No,
they'll
underestimate
figure it
anybody. These are
out.
very, very experienced businessmen. They know the markets, they know, and they go to the markets where there are easier terms and better advantages for them according to the type of products that they do. If they have to do tougher terms and tougher markets, they will do it. They just don't do
Yeah,
it. They just
yeah,
don't do it because if this is easier than that, I'll do this while that's good. When this becomes bad, I'll just do the
no,
more difficult. But that's every business, right? If you have two lines
yeah.
of,
But the thing is that it was a very short period of time, right? That like the pivoting was that this is what you have
they
to
showed
hand it to the Indians
an ability to pivot
and
immediately
adapt.
and to adapt,
Yeah.
which is to take your hat off.
Of
Okay,
course, and that's
it's
what that was my point. Like I'm looking at the Indians, you have to like take your hat off to the Indians because in very short period of time, I mean, they were already going to the EU, and we spoke about this in the previous podcast where Willem was talking about like the different agreements and what could have happened. Well, guess what? The reality is that it actually worked. Whether it was the agreement or the negotiations or the adaptability, but I'm not gonna say this like I'm not this is not a true statement, but it looks to me that the Indians, even with the 50% in the US, are like, we will definitely survive. We'll be okay. You know, like even with a 50%, even if the 50% stays, we'll be okay. Yeah, there
I
will be
don't
some
think so,
pain.
to be honest. I
There will
don't.
be some pain. There will be a lot of
There will
pain.
be a lot of pain. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
But it
not
depends.
saying.
It
yeah,
depends
but I
per
mean,
company, right? It depends per company because you have companies that are 90% dependent on the US and you have
Right,
companies
right, right.
that are
Yeah,
60, 70% dependent on the US. And that's a huge difference, right? So,
of
uh,
course. Of course. I mean, I'm not
and,
trying.
and,
That's why I
and,
was
and
trying to say that it's not a easy thing to say. Like it's not.
no, and I guess that if the situation does not change before the next season, then
then
the
it will
Before
real,
start to
April, right?
pile up, right? Then it begins to hurt
yeah.
because you can hurt
Yeah.
for 6 months while you are waiting for things to
Well,
adjust.
you can keep your staff, for example, right? You can keep your workers of the factory, but if there's no work for the next season, then you have to let them
Yeah.
go. Once you let them go, it's not easy to get them back, right? So even if the situation then improves, you might actually, like they will have to close factories at some point, right? And I think that had not really happened yet to date, but it will happen in the future.
No. Let's
Yeah.
hope that nothing like that ever happens, and that I mean, I just love how many jobs this industry creates. So let's hope that nothing like that has to happen, and that
Right.
people adjust to it, or they find a market. They will. Let's just
Yeah.
Mm.
keep on putting faith because they are doing a great job at finding an alternative market. Let them
Well,
keep
the,
on
the good
finding
news,
an
the good
alternative
news for the Indians is that it seems that they are getting at least their EU problem
market.
solved with the antibiotics. So it seems that the
Okay.
European Commission is happy with the documentation. So it seems that that's going into the right direction.
Okay. That's a good thing to happen,
It's a
especially for
great
the next 6, 7 months. It's another element of support. even if even if the 50% stays in the US, there's like a little bit more of help. Gabriel, can you see my screen? And William, can you see my screen?
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, so let me touch on this real quick so that I can bring I can bring this back. So of course, you were talking about inventory. So I have this inventory estimate that I always bring up. I'm trying to build a narrative here, of course, and I think I'll probably see this in hindsight in a couple of months when there's more data, but I think this is pretty much set in stone. So bear with me on this one. The blue bars are the inventory levels,
Yeah.
right? The estimated inventory, it's adjusted for price elasticity, population growth, and all that. Remember that it's like and obviously a function of import. And what I have here is that we have about 3.5% more inventory at the end of October. So starting, no, at the end of November. So starting December, starting like 2 days ago. So this is the inventory that we're starting December with. So we're starting in December with about 4% more than last year. This is not necessarily like, oh, inventories are shorter, their inventories are long. When you have 3%, 4%, these things are flat. Like let's just put things into perspective. But then I have this orange line. This orange line is this is what the growth in inventories would have been given if demand would have stayed constant. So what I do constant, meaning like the demand stayed constant through 2024, for example. So right now I would say that we have somewhere a gap between 5%. You will have a gap between 5 and 15, maybe 20%. Like, oh, we don't have enough inventory. But that is if we assume that demand is the same. I think that demand over the last 3 months in the US is considerably down. And that brings me to the next thing. So, for example, look at this. I think this is very, very interesting.
One question there. One question.
Yeah,
Let me interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Demand, you said demand is considerably down, but
Yes.
there's another way to put it. Availability of the products that were being used is considerably more difficult. Could that affect? I mean, at the end of the day, they're eating less shrimp. It could be that they're eating less shrimp from that particular outlet.
Yeah.
But is it that it's just more difficult to bring shrimp and to have it readily available because of the tariffs and because of the Indonesian issue that you had shrimp available, you don't have it now, you're shorting certain orders? Is that something that has happened?
So that's a good question. I think I'm gonna tell you my theory, but you trade this, so maybe you will be able to give me more
No, I
perspective.
drink. That's
I asked this to other importers as well, right? A lot of importers brought a lot of product Q1, Q2, and like July was a little bit like flattish, right? I think the holding periods are going to be slightly longer, maybe a month longer. So those inventories are still being had. Yes, it's harder to replace, but so think about it. If imports in September, US imports in September are going to be considerably down. I mean, we already saw that August was relatively down, right? For certain origins. September is probably going to be lower, and October is going to be like a little bit lower too. It's because the purchases in June and July were already slowing down, right? So think about like the time that you're moving. So you're purchasing less. I'm gonna grab this. I'm gonna hold to this cheap or lower price inventory, and I'm gonna be very selective, and I'm gonna lower my price when I need to, and I'm not. So it's more like inventory management, which makes this graph a little less relevant because these dynamics are not normal, right? So it's harder. For example, it's harder for people to source easy peels, or it's harder to source larger sizes or smaller sizes for different. But they're like, you know what? Yeah, it's hard, but we're not gonna see that until maybe a couple of months from now. Well, maybe January, maybe a month from now, we're gonna start seeing those inventory holes. In fact, in some cases, we're already seeing this, where some importers are like, I don't have 16s this. And they're like, oh, I'm long on 16s. And they're like, well, I'm long. And then a lot of it. This happens a lot, but this is more pronounced given the situation where they're like, well, in order for me to buy again, I need the cash of that inventory that I purchased a few months ago to purchase again. And in order for me to purchase again, the baseline prices need to be considerably lower. And that's not happening at the source. Ecuador is like barely lowering their prices. India is barely lowering any baseline price. Okay, sure, 10, 15 cents, like you said, 15 cents is nothing. That's not enough for like a big importer to be like, okay, give me an order of like 150 containers, like that kind of, like, that's not, I don't think that's happening. It's more like, okay, well, give me those 20 and hand to mouth. And that's why you see that big adjustment. And it's probably going to be that case until we see clearer whether demand in the US is getting better. And unfortunately, I do have to show you this. I know this is long-winded, so interrupt me
No,
as
no, no,
you.
don't worry. Go
No,
ahead.
no, no, it's good. It's good. Go.
But retail sales, for example, I put in the last 8 weeks of retail sales. This is Circana data. So I don't, this is not an estimate. I'm just summing and adding stuff up, right? And if you guys have this, a shout to Circana, thank you. Your data is pretty cool. Chris Dubois over there. But for example, in terms of sales, in terms of US dollars, the last 8 weeks are 5% lower than the previous year, but they're the lowest in the 5 years pre-pandemic, right? So 2020 was pandemic, right? But that was when it started to get better, right? At the end of 2020, because we were already past lockdown. Now look at the estimated pounds. My estimated pounds, I do estimate this. This is a different number, but it's somewhere around 10%, is the highest price to the consumer, and this is just the average. And when you look at promotions, promotional activity is the lowest it's been since EMS, since 2013 at least. It was a 50-cent increase in price to the consumer. 50 cents. It's not a lot yet, but it's the highest price that we've seen, again, since EMS. What happened during those days? There was a demand destruction. People stopped eating shrimp. And that was the risk that we had, and that I mentioned at Global Shrimp Forum was like, remember, for every 10% increase in price, consumption goes down by about 4% a year later.
Yeah, but in this
Prices.
case, you see that promotions have gone down. It's difficult to promote something that you don't know how much you're going to pay for. How do you
Exactly. No,
promote?
no,
I mean,
no.
that's what
Yeah. Of
that's
course, of
the
course.
knuckleball, right? You know,
Of
in
course.
baseball, you have a knuckleball, which is a ball that goes like this, and you can't hit it. I mean, that's the one that you don't know. We're all just guessing. What is it going to cost me land it so that I can promote or not promote? So of course, people are going to put the brakes on promoting this year because we had CBDs way before the tariffs,
Yeah.
and the CBDs were active. When was CBDs active? Willem, you remember? Was it April that they began?
Yeah.
Around
Yeah.
give or take. I might be wrong for a month. So we had April with the tariffs. That's a big hit, and then we had the huge hit, which was the tariffs. Now that's what you're dealing with in this market. You can expect there to be less promoting, and that's why they haven't moved it. Now the big question I think that you're proposing is 815 a high enough number that people will get scared of buying it?
But remember, this is the feature price, right? This is not the everyday price. The feature price just went up about 50 cents, but we're not taking into account a lot of the increase yet. That increase is going to be, we're going to see that full increase probably in the next few weeks or like into January. Like when we go to West Palm, we're probably going to see those numbers. Not only that, but remember, like shrimp is mostly consumed in food service, and we don't have that data. But promotions for shrimp are also expensive for a restaurant to run, right? Like you do cut a lot of that margin that you have on platings. Now we do have a lot of customers that buy like restaurant groups and restaurant buyers and buying groups for restaurants. For example, this is a very good example, and I want you to comment on this. Is Urner price, Expana price, sorry, contain or has the tariff included? And it's like, well, yes. In theory, it is because it's for immediate delivery. That's a spot market. But if you're a buyer, you're trying to buy a program right now for December delivery or November, December delivery, it's an entirely different market. And all these containers have been arriving over the past 6 weeks with 50% from India and with the increase in prices from Ecuador. So the sellers, the importer, is trying to balance that cheap inventory with that super expensive inventory and trying to not pass that price increase as much as they can. But guess what? I don't think they can do that anymore. That's it. It's over. It's done.
Right, they have to pass it. There's no way to
Exactly.
not pass it.
Yeah. And that has an implication that demand potentially can contract. Now, hopefully,
If it were to go higher and if they didn't have enough in those inventories, which you mentioned that they bought a lot of inventories in Q1 and Q2 because of the CBDs pushed them to buy a lot more than they needed to buy. So they actually loaded up this year. They bought a lot more in the beginning. So when the tariffs hit, they slowed down, and we just saw the slowdown. So now when you have inventory that was bought previous, you can actually average down. And if you're an importer and you're thinking that they might take away the tariff soon, or there might be a change in the tariff from 50 to let's say 25, you don't actually want to hold any product that was imported at 50. You want to average
That's
down.
why they're importing very little of that 50, and they're
And
like,
that's
oh,
why they're
we're
burning
gonna
through
like,
it and trying to move it out of their hands because it's a hot potato. Because
Yeah.
if it changes, it's a hot potato. It's not a hot potato if the market doesn't change.
I mean, wouldn't you do that, right? You get rid of like inventory that you bought at 10% or less than 10%, right? At a good margin so that you can buy that 50% and keep sales going as much as you can, right? Like, and just because it's just like give or take, give or take, give or
Correct.
take. But there's gonna be an inflection point, which is the presentation that didn't show up in my last presentation at Global Stream Forum because the Mac didn't work out.
Quote
Quote
unquote.
unquote.
He didn't do the slide and he's blaming
All
on the
right, Dr.
technology.
Evil.
Yeah, he didn't do crap. He was drinking out with me last night, and then he shows up and gives you a pen drive. He gave you the wrong pen drive. That's the problem, quote unquote.
Quote unquote.
The computer didn't show my graph. I made a very new graph. Where's the graph? Nobody's ever seen the graph. You never showed up.
Nobody's ever seen that graph. But you've seen that, and that was the inflection. In fact, let me stop sharing, so that I can share the other one. Well, I did stop sharing, right?
Yeah, you stop.
But anyway, and that was what we presented in the previous webinars, and we're gonna present it tomorrow. It's like this is it. No,
What's
like
tomorrow?
no, but January, yeah, but January, yeah, tomorrow, yeah. But January, if we don't have a clear answer on the 50% tariff, I think we're gonna start seeing a lot of balance sheets in red and potentially a lot of consolidation in the US. For those who are financially sound, getting of other people's businesses because you're gonna need that cash to buy that 50% shrimp. And you're gonna still buy it, right? Because you're not gonna you're
You
not gonna
think
get rid of India.
you think it's that big of a hurt to importers?
Of course, prices have only gone up around 24% on value added.
Okay, that's a very strong comment. It's that big of a hurt that it could end up causing some consolidation among importers.
Some consolidation, right? And then there's gonna be like, okay, if, I'm gonna buy a lot less next time, just gonna keep my good customers, that kind of thing. It has the potential to hurt the industry for the next 2, 3 years if because prices have to go up, right? Then you're gonna have to eat an effective tariff if you were balanced, India, Ecuador, Indonesia, and all that, your effective rate, your reciprocal effective rate will be around 37%, and prices have only gone up 24. You still have another 10% to make up for that. Does that make any sense? I'm like jumping all around, but
No, it does, but I'm just saying it. I don't see it as dangerous as you mentioned it. So I don't see this causing too much of consolidation yet. No,
yeah, I mean, I'm talking
I'm not
about like the end.
measuring. I'm talking
If
about
this
shrimp, and
persists,
I'm not talking about the other businesses that import a lot of other items that could have been extremely hurt with their supply and their availability with these tariffs. I'm talking about shrimp, which I think has been able to come into the country, and there's ways to average it out. And I think people had inventory. So I'm trying to play naive. My wife says I'm always trying to play naive. I'm always trying to play the good guy and the naive guy. I believe that there's everybody's in a good standing and everything's good, but sometimes things hurt more than it seems. So I mean, you could very well be right, and I have no clue what I'm talking about. So it
no,
does.
no, I think you're right. I think, and in fact, your positivity actually leads me to my last slide, which is, let me show you
How
this
to
guy.
make whiskey,
I
how to make
have to.
scotch, how to make scotch disappear. So you pour it here. Here's the story. How do you make scotch disappear? You pour it, say like so, open the bottle, pour it
Salud.
like salud, salud. You pour it like so, and once you're done pouring it, then you make it disappear like so. Thank you. That's how you make a scotch disappear. This is a magic trick.
This is a this predictions is like if these things stay, this will happen, and of course players will adapt and they're like, well, I don't want to go out of business, so let's see what I can change, right? So that's why on average, that's why you use regression analysis to say like on average this is what would happen. Of course, I'm not like, for example, a 10% increase in price, that doesn't mean that consumption is going to go down 8%. I don't know that, right? Why? Because there will be some adaptability from importers or from retailers and be like, you know what? We don't want that. Let's pivot or something like that. But remember that we were talking earlier, and like I don't like consumption per capita. So I have my latest consumption per capita estimates. These are vastly preliminary. Imports forecast for October, November, December, because I think I have I actually think I have September and October pretty solid in terms of US imports. And you were saying like people are eating more shrimp, and I'm like, yes and no with these estimates. Yes, for the first 10 months of the year. 9 months of the year when prices were fine and all that. But I
So
think the
they
last
were
quarter,
eating more shrimp in the beginning.
mm,
They were eating more shrimp in the beginning of the year.
well, is now my data because again, consumption per capita is always done a year later when you have the data because otherwise you don't know, right? Because I can estimate inventories, let's say through October, for example. I have it through November right now, but we are slightly up. We're 4.96 versus 4.89. So very, very slight. For me, it's like flat
Yeah, it's a tie.
consumption per capita. But the problem is that the last quarter is most likely going to be lower. And I remember I'm forecasting population growth, which we don't know what's happening in terms of immigration, because immigration is a big component of population growth as well. We're talking about price elasticity. Elasticity went up, so prices went up a lot, but not necessarily because demand from consumers were up, but demand from importers was up to beat the tariffs. So that's a big component. So we won't know until maybe like March of next year. But I'm suspecting that it's going to remain relatively flat in 2025, which is not a bad thing, but it's setting the stage for 2026 to not be great in terms of like if this 50% for India stays, prices need to go up higher than that they are right now, easily. And that will be at least 30% higher in price, 35% higher in prices. We're 24, so we need at least another 10 to 15% for prices to go up in 2026. If that happens, then we have a total of 30%. That is a total of somewhere around 10% consumption reduction into 2026. And that's definitely the implication. Again, this is a scenario, this is a model. This is if everything stays the same, nothing is the same. But I'm just gonna leave that there because I am Angel Downer, Debbie Downer, just like bringing the bad news to everyone. Um,
No, no. So you
You're
really
you're
see
not invited next year.
Now, dude, Willem, if my predictions of the cost and the market are right, I need like a crown if I present. I not only need to present, but I need like a costume or something like that.
I have my Bubba Shrimp costume. I can give you my Bubba Gump.
Oh, dude, yeah, yeah, yeah. That would be nice.
You
Yeah.
can take the Bubba Gump
We'll put you
suit.
we'll put you in a shrimp suit with a crown. No worries.
And this is the
Fine.
UB index.
So this is how much prices have moved up. Liberation Day,
Liberation
and
Day. That's right. That's what he called it, right? Hey, whatever works, right? All right. So we see an increase on value added of 23% on what's the green? The tariff?
that's just a weighted in terms of
Average.
volume, one to the other. In commercial value, right? Because I'm doing
Yeah. So what's
consumption, which
happening
is
with headless
edible
Shalon?
weight.
That's
Huh?
that's an enigma, or that's a question that people want to know. What's happening with headless Shalon in the U.S. market? I'll tell you. I think in the
You
world,
tell us. You tell us.
I think everybody in the world wants peeled products and wants IQF and wants the new version of the shrimp. The shrimp is no longer wanted in the old school headless shallon. And I'm not saying not wanted. That's an extremely strong statement. I think that just the demand on that has dropped a bit on headless shallon blocks, and people are
Yeah.
moving towards value-added items. Angel,
One
yeah, go
takeaway.
ahead.
Sorry. I'm gonna add one more. Like if you check my Farmgate price portal, right? Like one other like super interesting thing to look at is the Farmgate prices for Vietnam, right? Vietnamese Farmgate prices go skyrocket, right?
Why is
Recent,
that?
It's because the local production costs, the local challenges, like they have a huge raw material shortage, which also explains the imports and the reprocessing, right? So the local
okay.
raw material can in no way compete with the imports, right? So the Vietnamese, in that sense, like there's a good future for the processors as a reprocessing center because they are really ahead of competition there. But as a shrimp producer, the country faces huge challenges moving ahead, right? And everyone realizes it. I think they are still kind of figuring out like what their place in the whole industry is moving ahead.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Long-term perspective, that supply will consolidate into Ecuador and India is only getting stronger, right? Like if demand does not pick up strongly, or if it even declines in the US due to the tariff situation, then eventually, like producers in Indonesia and Vietnam will face a really hard time to maintain into the export business, right?
Yeah. You did warn us about that. Same for Indonesia, right?
Indonesia and Vietnam, it's the same
Yeah,
story.
the difficulties. All right. Well, I from Ecuador, I am a little bit more positive, but I'm more
Of
positive for
course you are. Like, but I'm still
How
sure God is not
convenient.
an Ecuadorian. He's not.
No, no. So I'm positive, but I am not negative about the market as well. I'm not negative about the market. I think that the market is going to be there, and I think that the market needs more shrimp than just the Ecuadorian shrimp. So
Yeah.
there's so many things we cannot do that we
Increase
cannot.
your capacity, man.
Well, we can't. We're trying and we're doing it, but we can't. So that's why I think that everybody is going to still get their share of orders and of demand.
And even if you could build the capacity, like also from a buyer perspective, like what commodity chain is dependent on just a single origin, right? Like no one.
So there's many things that we don't see coming that we need to account for, and we have to be well educated in what's happening in the industry. Guys, thank you so much. Cheers. I'm out of magic juice.
Me too.
Happy Christmas.
Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere, Willem. Let's figure out the data.
It's you, not me.
We have.
Make me the host.
It's already clear.
Okay.
Boom.
Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet. Sweet.
Oh God.
He hasn't surrendered though. He hasn't
Don't say
completely
God.
surrendered.
Just call
He
me
caught it.
Angel. That's fine.
He caught it in the same. I mean, it's been 40 minutes. He caught it in 40 minutes, man. When you catch it in 40 minutes, that you really lose.
The thing is that I can tell a decent story about Vietnam, right? It's 8 fucking months, right?
Wait, let's undo. How do we unrecord?
I think we're not recording anymore.
Oh shit! Wait, it's still recording.
yeah?
It's done.
Looper.
You have any more scotch?
Don't record.
That's one of the things you don't say on camera. Well, because it's not you and it's me, it's not.
Lots of parties in the city. Yeah.
Stop recording. Stop recording now.
This is the moment. This is it. Now.